Well, hello, welcome to ReduceThreats.com, my protection organization. My name is Victor Vogel. I'm going to be your host for about the next 45 minutes. And our topic today is going to be neighborhood watches. Neighborhood watches in the past have been a real problem for neighborhood security in that they were hard to organize, they took time, volunteers were hard to come by, integration with the police department wasn't always as simple as it needs to be. Now, so why would I be concerned about this right now? And by the way, you can go to reducethreats.com and pick up a lot of information on this. You can also read my audio book or listen to it there on my site, or I'll put a link to both the site and my audio book on Amazon. I mean, not Amazon, Apple iPad or iPodcasts, so that you can uh, listen to the book. It's actually a combination of listen video, because I actually videoed on YouTube the reading of the book so that I could make sure that you could see all of the examples. And a lot of times when you do an audio book and they refer to a chart or something, you can't see it, you can't relate to it. We can on this book. Now, if you go directly to the website and listen to it there, it'll take you chapter by chapter. You can stop in the middle of a chapter, rewind, go back, pick up where you left off, those kinds of things. You can see all those on your smartphones also. So there's a lot there. There's also on my YouTube playlist that you'll be directed to, where this will show up, or a lot of other hints. There's a whole playlist on kidnapping. If you happen to be traveling internationally, there's a lot of things about just how to reduce your threat in general, as opposed to self-defense, martial arts, guns, those kinds of things. The idea is if you're in that situation, you've already failed with your protection. So this neighborhood watch thing is very important from the standpoint that it is proactive, and it talks about how to prepare your neighborhood to be less victimized by crime. Because if some of the things we're going to talk about are in place, and it's very much aware that these things are in place, criminals they have two objectives: they hit their targets and get the stuff and get out without getting caught. Well, anything you do to put in the way of that thought process and that whole scheme, by the way, their whole mentality and how they do that and their plan of operation, so to speak, is in my book. So it's another reason so you understand what to look for. The whole idea of a neighborhood preparing themselves makes that neighborhood less attractive to a victim. So if you've got a dark neighborhood that no one's alert, no one's doing anything, there are no cameras, anything like that, that's a lot more attractive than one that posts a sign with a camera up on a light pole high above it saying, hey, every step you take in here, we're going to be watching. That's not necessarily something criminals want to have happen. So that's why I'm thinking it's important for you to be alert and to take notice about this particular video and some of the things I'm going to show you. Some of these things I'm going to be sharing my screen with you, and we're going to be looking at some YouTube stuff. And there's some of it that's kind of way out there today, but we'll talk about that a little bit. So we're going to talk about another reason. One more thing before we get started. Why? If you look at the Tampa neighborhood that was terrorized by a serial killer, and the thing that caught that serial killer in the end was a camera on a home showing the person walking up and down and sharing all that information amongst the community. And finally, somebody said, aha, that's who it might be. It led to I don't know if they captured a guy who committed suicide or what, but it stopped it. They caught them. And so we've had several incidences where police chases have led people into neighborhoods and they started running throughout the neighborhood. So it's a way of tracking that and making sure that if you're part of that, you know where they are, what's going on, you know where you are, so therefore you can make some judgments about your safety and security from that. So we'll talk a lot about that. Neighborhood watches normally, or you can take a more passive approach to it, or you can take a more active approach to it. Now, passive simply means that, you know, you're going to put maybe a camera in your house. You're not too concerned about what everybody else is doing in the neighborhood. And passive simply means I'm going to wait and make sure if something does happen that, you know, at least they have the information to catch the person. And if you think about law enforcement, most of the time their hands are tied. I mean, they're a patrolling organization. They can't be everywhere. There's just not enough of them to be everywhere that they need to be every minute. So, you know, they can't look at you and say, no matter how much your taxes you pay, they can't look at you and say, hey, I'm your personal bodyguard as law enforcement. It's just not happening. So that's one reason why you need to become more active as an individual in your own environment, plus extend that out to protect further out. Now, I have a thing called centrifugal protection, and it starts with, you know, your bedroom, then it works to the house, then it works to just outside the house, and then protection out into the yard, and then protection on the perimeter of the yard, and then protection into the neighborhood. And if you take that concept, the criminal would have to go through each one of those barriers and make it through all of those barriers to get into your bedroom. So that's one thought process we have relative to this. It tells me that the more barriers we have between a potential criminal or attacker and me, the better that's going to be, the more protection I'm going to have. When it gets down to the point where they get in the bedroom, it's me, then that's where self-defense is critical. You know, your ability to defend yourself with either a gun or martial arts or whatever. But if you get to that point, it's normally a lose-lose scenario, because somebody's getting hurt, somebody's getting killed, or, you know, it's just a dangerous situation when you get to that point. So there's a lot of merit to this centrifugal process and putting barriers between you and criminals, whether you're in your home or outside. Now, we're talking about the neighborhood right here, but in my book and also throughout my blogs and my information I post on my website and YouTube, you'll see tips that go beyond, because you don't just live in your home. You've got protection in schools, you've got protection in other areas. So I cover a lot of that from that standpoint. Now, so I would encourage you not to be passive as a neighborhood watch. Now, I know that's difficult because people are so concerned. Actually, we're connecting less today, and people are so concerned about getting each other involved and coordinating all that. We're going to cover that in a little bit. But what has come along that's helped us a lot today is the idea of what's going on technically in the world. Technology has advanced to where it makes it a lot simpler and a lot more secure to have a neighborhood watch that's effective. I mean, really effective, and help you through that. There's some things people have to get through, and we'll talk about those towards the end. But some of the things that are going on, obviously, are, and have been around for a while, are video cameras. Now, cameras, from the most part, can operate as a protection defense if they're visible. If you're hiding cameras, then all you're really doing is catching somebody after they've done the act. Your purpose would have to be simply to catch them. So if you're going to employ video cameras, employ them very obviously, you know, and employ them in a way where criminals will have a hard time getting to them. Up high, pointing down, within protective barriers that they'd have to break into to disarm, those kinds. So, alarms and video cameras are very effective if criminals know you have them. Okay, because if they know you have them, that's just one more thing that they have to worry about. So they'll start looking for somebody that doesn't have them. So if you're in a neighborhood and you're a house that's well alarmed and well secured with video cameras and strong lighting and all that kind of stuff, if I look at that house and I look at the house down three houses down from you and it's dark, and it's there is no lighting. There are no cameras visible to me as a criminal, and I don't sense any alarm systems. There's no indication that you have an alarm system. I'm probably going to move off of that well-protected house to the one that's not protected because I have less risk and better chance of escape. So those are things you need to think about. That's the mentality of the criminal. And so what you want to do is make yourself less vulnerable using this. So video cameras are one option, you know, and as you move out into perimeter, I've even seen and recommended certain homes, particularly out in areas that don't have immediate police protection. They're under the sheriff's watch, which might move from a 9-10 minute response to a 45-minute response. I've actually had people who own property farther out put laser beams on their posts down low or about maybe a waist high, so animals don't set them off, but you know, something bigger than a big dog would set them off, and set those on four corners, and the beams actually connect. And if that barrier is broken, it sets the alarm and triggers the lights and triggers the cameras on that focused area. So that's an example of some things that you can do. And you need to keep in mind, if you're farther out and the response time's longer, the more warning you get, the better off you're going to be, the less you're going to have to be concerned about pulling out a gun out of the drawer and shooting it off in your house some way. So those are some of the areas, but you know, the most recent thing that's come up is this Amazon Ring program where people are putting doorbells on that, and they have now connected that via an app to a thing called Neighborhood Watch, and you can actually have a sense or an indication within this application that's on your smartphone what's going on in your neighborhood. So I thought that would be a good place for you to get an idea of how technology has moved from, you know, trying to get 10 people around the table and walk the streets late at night with some sort of flashlight, hoping a criminal doesn't attack you on the street, to an integrated technological surveillance system that could be manned by anyone at any time very comfortably without any potential hazard and consequently liability, like the Trayvon Martin case, where a person was just out roaming this street and happened to get engaged in a fight and had to defend himself, or whatever your perspectives are on that. Had that person not had to be out there doing the security, you could have called the police and that would have been a different situation. So those are examples of how this can work in your favor. Let me take you up here and let's look at a little issue here. I want to take you in, and we'll go over here and look at this right here. Let's take a look at this video, and this is on YouTube, and I think this is about the Ring surveillance program.
media, but this time it actually led to an arrest.
Isabel Rosales tonight showing you the neighborhood watch of the future, and the question, does it go too far?
An intruder breaks into a home as the owner is asleep inside.
There's a man 2 feet from my bed telling me to put a pillow over my head.
Thankfully, Andrea Sofarelli had two saving graces, her barking dog and her Ring surveillance camera.
In my case, they couldn't pull any prints. So if it wasn't for the video and the video going viral, the police would have absolutely nothing to go on.
Now the Amazon-owned Ring has launched a Neighbors app to help fight crime.
You can hold it and see a video that somebody posted.
Oh my goodness.
An interactive map allows neighbors to post texts, pictures, or videos of crimes or suspicious activities. The Neighbors Network was previously available in the Ring app, but this new standalone app means it works more like a social media platform where everyone can be in the know, whether they have a Ring or not. But there's still some concerns.
And it's a two-edged sword. I think it's great for security purposes, but I think there'll be a problem with our privacy issues and maybe some racial profiling.
Steve Haggerty with the Tampa Police Department says the app will help speed up investigations. Instead of having to physically show up to request video, they can now ask for permission through the app or by calling.
What we're talking about here is something that's much quicker, much easier, and probably cleaner. And it's really good video, too.
In Tampa, I'm Isabel Rosales, ABC Action News.
Okay, so you could see here with this particular app how people are now connected to other people within a certain parameter on their program. So on this Ring program, you can, or on an individual app, you can now sign up and become networked with your neighbors. So if you had a meeting and people all committed to that kind of interactive video relationship, all of a sudden, you know, any kind of suspicious activity is broadcast out throughout the whole organization of that neighborhood. And all of a sudden, people are alert to what this person looks like, what they were wearing, possibility of seeing cars out in front that you could recognize, etc. You can do the same thing if there is a car that parks out on your street, you know, and particularly where I live, there is a car that was parking out on the street on a pretty regular basis. I finally went out and confronted the individual and said, you know, I noticed you're parking on the street in front of the house. And of course, it was a cab driver, and it was a big shade tree. So that was a pretty central place for him to set to be able to go pick people up. And I live in a small town, so it was a pretty safe assumption that's who this was and what he was doing. But if something like that was going on in the neighborhood, that picture would be distributed and posted to everyone in the neighborhood, and everyone could understand what that person looked like and what they were about. Now, I'm going to take you back again and just kind of recap a more general approach to let's see here. We need to get out of this big picture. A more general approach that's used. Now, this particular article on LifeWire here, and I'll put these links in the description. This here says how to start a high-tech neighborhood watch. And it's a pretty good program. I mean, just going down through it, it makes a lot of sense. They're talking about, you know, and this is something you need to understand, is you can actually look at Google Maps and profile an organization. Criminals can do this. They can look at a Google, they don't even have to come into your neighborhood anymore. They can look at Google Map and see where the streets and alleys are, etc. If they look at it at night, like this neighborhood right here, they can see what is lit, and down here what is not lit. So you can see this house is very well lit. This house is not very well lit. So that is something criminals could have at their disposal, and you need to know that too. So when you sit down and map out a strategy or program to better defend yourself and your neighborhood around you, to extend that perimeter, so to speak, before people can get to you, you can use Google Maps to do that too. There's a thing called Spot Crime, which is a free service, shows detailed history of crimes around your neighborhood. There's several of those programs out in existence today. You just have to kind of Google what you think you want, and it'll tell you about sex offenders. It'll tell you what the crime rates have been, what kind of crime they've been, how often they were, etc., exactly the locations they took place, so that you can highlight whether your neighborhood falls into one of those areas. So this kind of information is really good about collecting information and research about where you stand and then what you need to do to better protect yourself. You can use media, social media. There's a thing called Home Elephant, cell phones, smartphones, all those kinds of things, Instagram. All of those programs, if you go over here, this is my Facebook page, I have a group page called the Leadership Talk Show. It's another program I do. And you can join that group, and it's highly restrictive. In other words, you have to pass through some pre-screening before I allow you to get into this group. But I can post things on here. If this were a neighborhood watch thing, everybody who signed up would be on there. They could look at it on a regular basis, whether they're on their phone, whether they're on wherever they are. They could look at this before and find out, what the latest things are, what's going on, who's doing what. You can also use this to coordinate your scheduling. If somebody is set to monitor these, like if somebody is working and stays up real early in the morning, perhaps that person would be in the Facebook group, and they would monitor that, and they may monitor your neighborhood app. So if you kind of get together as a group and start putting the strategies for the use of Facebook and those kinds of things together, along with camera technology, these apps for neighborhood watching, you can literally connect virtually in real time. And as that police officer was saying, you can literally also connect with your police department if you coordinate with them. And this gives them real time, and it allows, in many cases, for them to track the movement of somebody who they're trying to find. If they're called to a burglary and that person starts running, it allows them to track the movement via the neighborhood connected sources of videos that are out there. And so that's very helpful for them. It reduces the threat to people. It reduces the threat to their life while they're in pursuit, a whole host of things. And it also may cause people to think twice before they shoot, okay? So that's another thought process. It makes this a very beneficial program. So you can coordinate with police on this as well. So, the networking like this, finding out which programs work for your neighborhood, putting them together, even if you have to bring someone in to help you network it, putting cameras on, these cameras are very inexpensive. You can buy a wireless camera, stick it on a light pole, and it can cover a whole street and be interconnected to the system for Facebook or whatever program that you're going to use in that network to connect you to people. Now, this makes everybody alert, and everybody is participating. You don't have someone out roaming and walking the streets, okay, playing security guard or playing, wannabe law enforcement officer. You don't have that person out there doing that. You don't need a person out there with a gun on the street. You do this from a very safe and secure environment, and it has the capacity to see far more than any one or even two individuals walking streets could. So that's why cameras, not just on the front of your house, but on the back of your house, lighting that lights up things like your backyard or alleyway if somebody walks into that 180-degree range. If they walk in, lights come on, cameras are already rolling. All of this information, you can pick this up. You can relay that directly to a police officer immediately. They can send patrol cars to attack that area. That means the police are also more efficient. They're actually going to where stuff is happening, as opposed to just patrolling along around hoping somebody sees them and won't come up. They're actually responding to specific scenarios that could protect you as an individual. That's safer for you. It's safer for the law enforcement officer. There's just so many benefits to making this neighborhood watch work with technology. Now, the last thing I really want to cover, we don't have anybody attending, so I don't have any questions for people who might be asking questions. I don't have any questions up here. So the last thing I kind of want to cover is this whole idea of security versus privacy, and that is an issue. Obviously, the internet is a two-edged sword. There's those people who use it for the positive things like we're talking about. Then there are also those people who use that to track the neighborhood and the people in the neighborhood to see what they're doing. Now, the way I kind of think about that is this. Yes, I mean, your privacy might be open to some people, but the vast majority of people in your neighborhood are not criminals. Okay, the last thing they're concerned about is the vast majority of them. And that's not to say there aren't some, but the vast majority of them are really kind of concerned about security. They don't care, what you're cooking, when you come and go, who comes in your house late at night with you, those kinds of things. That's not really the primary purpose of most people who are in neighborhoods. Now, it could happen, and if it does happen, or if somebody posted on that social group media, someone who saw someone in their neighborhood going with the wife of another neighborhood person into the house late at night, early in the morning, you can get rumors and you can get all kinds of things, but that's far less likely to be happening and easier to deal with than criminals and people who assault you in your home, who rob you, who take advantage of you while you're on vacation. And, there's some principles that go along with this that are in the book that I present about protection, about you don't want to be posting on this group Facebook, hey guys, or on your Facebook page in general, hey guys, I'm not going to be available. I'm going to be in Hawaii for the next 2 weeks, because, obviously you're telling everybody in the world that you're not going to be home for 2 weeks. Now, the advantage of a group neighborhood system is you could type that on there and say, hey, look, just so the neighborhood watch knows and is tracking my house with the cameras and everything, I would appreciate extra attention. That now tells the criminal, hey, you're going to be gone for 2 weeks, but you got a lot of eyes and ears on your house and cameras on your house while you're away. And it alerts neighborhoods to kind of neighbors to watch out. We used to do that. We used to go to our next door neighbor and say, hey, check my mail, feed my dog, watch my house, that kind of stuff. This way, you can feel pretty comfortable, because not only are people doing that, but they're doing that across the whole neighborhood. So it's not just your house that's getting protected. That whole neighborhood is getting protected. And that leaves a lot more comfort. That makes you a lot more comfortable if you know it's an expanded protection environment. It's a centrifugal circle. You know, people are going to have to go through the neighborhood, then they're going to have to go to your house, and they're going to have to get into your house. And all the time, you have little barriers along the way that have been set up that can alert the police and maybe catch them before they either get into your house or get away with something in your house. So there's a lot of advantages to this. What you have to do as a neighborhood to kind of deal with this privacy stuff is you have to feel comfortable with your neighbors. And that's something we don't do much anymore. Most people, you know, I have lived in apartment complexes. People didn't know anybody in any apartments around them for 3 or 4 or 5 years. So you need to get out, touch base, bring your neighborhood in, get organized, talk about these things, talk about how they'll be used, talk about the privacy issue and how it will be dealt with if it's violated, talk about the security, the need to invest a little bit in some of these doorbells and stuff like that, and then, you know, more as you can afford more, or maybe even get groups together to do a GoFundMe to help put the cameras in your neighborhood and the systems in your neighborhoods that you need. So those are all kinds of things that I think are very beneficial to a neighborhood watch today. They make it easier. You don't have to rely on somebody getting out of their house at 10 o'clock at night and walking the streets at 7 in the morning and then take turns doing that. I mean, the system is set up to alert anybody and everybody about an intruder. It also anybody and everybody can take a look at the video that's transpiring from, say, a community neighborhood cameras that go to everybody off a pole. They can take a look at that and see, hey, this car, and I don't recognize this car in my neighborhood, and it's been going up and down this street 5 or 6 times. It parked at one spot. It can also alert you, like that picture showed you, the houses that had lighting and houses that didn't. So you might want to rethink how you light your house at night, and use some automatic lights to turn on at, say, 10 o'clock at night and stay on till like 7 in the morning when sun rises. These are things that are all available to you from neighborhood watches that make it far, far easier to do a neighborhood watch and a lot more secure. Now, there was one area, the last area I'll cover is an extremely controversial area, but people have been trying to employ this concept. It's a little expensive. It does require an individual to man it, and that's drones, where people will fly drones up above the neighborhood, not through the neighborhood, not down on the street at 15 feet above the ground, going down the street and taking shots in all the windows in the house, but something that hovers up over the neighborhood, a couple 100 feet or less, something that's within the range, doesn't violate the FAA's flight rules, and kind of hovers over the neighborhood and sort of scans the neighborhood on an ongoing basis, going from one end of it to the other end and covering all of that. This kind, police are actually testing this in certain neighborhoods, and people get really wary about, they think big government's watching them. Comes from all the conspiracy stuff that's going on right now, but it could be an issue if somebody's using that, but there needs to be some identifying mark on that drone, like a flashing blue and red light or a flashing yellow and green light, and so it doesn't say it's police. That's okay too, because that lets criminals know they're being watched by a drone. Okay, and that's not a good feeling for a criminal, just like people it's not a good feeling for people. So these are all techniques and things that I hope, you find a little more useful and might encourage you to kind of get people around the neighborhood, around the table over, some coffee and snacks, and kind of talk about this and the value of it and the pros and the cons of it and how you would deal with the cons so that the pros of security and safety for your family are the best. It's really sad that you cannot let your kids walk the neighborhood to their friends anymore. You have to walk with them, or you don't even want them out in your front yard unless you're with them today. So these things are things that kind of may get us back to that realm where you can feel more comfortable being in your neighborhood because there's some sort of security activity going on while you're there. If you have questions about this, once again, I'm going to post my website. I'll post on my website. You can actually go to where it says audiobook on the page and read and listen, and view that audiobook there. I'll also put the iTunes podcast site for that there. I'll put these links that I showed you onto my website for the YouTube we saw, and also the sort of that one article about how you might want to look at it. If you Google them, there's a lot more of them that will help you get your police department involved. These guys, this helps them. This helps them tremendously. You just don't know how easier you make their jobs, how much safer you make their jobs, how less likely they are to make a mistake on their job with this kind of stuff in place. So get with your police department to do that. But I'll put all the links on there and if you have any questions, put them in the comments section. This is going on to YouTube. I recommend highly you and your friends get in there and pass on all of this information to all your friends and have them subscribe to that YouTube page. And that'll be in the link down below in the description area. You want to subscribe to that because periodically I'm going to be doing talk shows and webinars like this on and putting them into those playlists. And then they also go into an iPod podcast. So all that'll be below. And I hope you stay safe and secure. I hope this has been beneficial to you. Don't leap into this. It's not a crisis scenario for most people. It's something you need to just kind of get folks together and, build support for and talk through and make sure you have everything worked out and that kind of thing. There's a whole planning phase in my book about threat assessment that can walk you through some of how to do that, and actually some sample forms that you're welcome to copy and change and modify to fit your needs. All of that is on that reducethreat.com site. So I hope this helps. Until next time, you stay safe and you stay secure, and you need to know every day I spend my time creating bad guy free zones for people. Have a great day.